Okay, this is against the Kedesh Yud, right? On which day? This is a Kedesh El. This is Aleph Elul. This Igeres HaKedesh, talks about two madregas of Chesed. Chesed, which is Gvul, and Chasdei Ad Hashem, which is Bli Gvul. Okay? Chasdei Avai, which is Bli Gvul, is the second half of the Igeres HaKedesh. The last three Shiurim, which has to do with Tshuva. But we're going to leave that alone. Stam Chesed, and we're going to be discussing this Igeres HaKedesh, is it's Dafka limited. Because this Igeres HaKedesh has two halves. The first half talks about Torah and Mitzvahs. The second half talks about Tshuva. What's the difference between the half that talks about Torah and Mitzvahs and the half that talks about Tshuva? The half that talks about Tshuva is about Bli Gvul. And the half talks about Torah and Mitzvahs talks Dafka about Gvul. But it's the Gvul of Torah and Mitzvahs. What is the Gvul of Torah and Mitzvahs? The Gvul of Torah and Mitzvahs is called in Chassidus a Hagbala Atzmos. It's a limited act, like Tefillah and Mezuzah. But in this limited act, you have the whole Atzmos of the Eibishter. In other words, it says in Sharichat V'Amunah that Olam Chesed Yibana, that the Eibishter's hiding himself was an act of kindness. Olam, Lashon Helep. If Hashem wouldn't hide himself, there wouldn't be a world. So the Gevuras of the Eibishter are Inyan of Chesed. But Beklolos, there's two madreges. There's two levels, two ideas, and when you say that for the Eibishter to make a world, there has to be Gevuras. Number one, he has to hide himself so the world shouldn't know him, it should be itself. Number two, he has to concentrate his whole Atzmos into a physical act. In Briyas Ha'elames, in terms of Chitonius, element of the creation, Gevura means Eibishter Poshet reduces his light to a tiny bit that the world should be able to be Mekabelet. When it comes to Yiddishkeit, there's also Gevuras, but this is called Gevuras Atzmiyim. He concentrates his whole Atzmis into a small little thing, like you have the Lashon Tzimtzum Shchinose Ben Shnei Badi Yodim. The whole Atzmis of the Eibishter is in a small little area of Makam. It's in from Gevura, but it's not a Gevura that hides and limits, but the whole Atzmis is in Gevura. So the first half of this Igeres HaKedesh talks about the idea that mitzvahs have limitations. Not limitations, chas v'shalom, they're limited in their gilui, but that through a limited act, you're magal the Atzmos of Ein Sof. You understand? But the second half, the Igeres HaKedesh is going to say that sometimes that's not enough. And you have to have also tshuva. Tshuva means giving. Okay, without a cheshbon, I suppose at this point, it's not too difficult to figure out that that's what the Alter Rebbe heads.
Does tzedakah always mean in the sense of physical money?
Yeah, or physical food, which is even more than physical money. This is page Ayin Aleph, which means that this Igeres HaKedesh Yud is earlier than Ches and Tes. This is Igeres HaKedesh page Ayin Aleph. This is even later than earlier than Igeres HaKedesh Tes. Stuff goes from Dalet, even earlier. No. Igeres HaKedesh Tes was from Tovkuf Mem Ches. This is from Igeres Dalet. This is the beginning of it, right? Till here. Till Ein Ben David Bo, Sachakol. These three amudim of the Igeres HaKedesh, and then there goes a whole arichas. You see how much is here? The after shtikel is almost as long as the Igeres HaKedesh itself. But in any case, let's begin to read. Like I told you, this Igeres HaKedesh talks about that Yiddishkeit has to have gevuris, but it's a hagbala atzmis, including tzedakah. And then later on he says that there's a aved of tzedakah, which is for tshuva, which is bli gvul. But we're only going to learn the first part. Shalom v'chaim. After asking peace and life. In other words, how are you? Pesach devora yor. The opening of my words arouses. Eizin shemas. Ears that are already listening. Tichachas chayim. That want to be shown a way of life. Asher yichiach ad Hashem chayim. The Eibishter shows a way of life. Most people translate echach loshen musar, criticism, but it means to unweisen. Aidei Nevi'ah through its prophets. Va'amar, because the Navi says the following words. And the Rebbe says in the footnote, what's up Navi? To say that this is not a hash'ara or a svara, this is a fact, it's a vaday. When Navi speaks it's true, chaz de ad Hashem, the Eibishter's kindness, kilei tamnu v'geme, because they have no end. Right? Chaz de Hashem, the kindness, the Eibishter, kilei tamnu v'geme, because they have no end. In fact, Alter Rebbe, it should have really said, kilei samu, because they don't finish. The Eibishter's kindness don't finish. Why does it say tamnu? Okay? Now, I can't help myself. I'll tell you the answer. Chaz de Hashem means tzedakah bli gvul, as opposed to gvul. Kilei tamnu, because we're not tmimim. Kilei tamnu, because we're not whole. If we would be tmimim, we wouldn't have to have chaz de avaya. It would be enough chesed olam. Chesed b'mdida v'agbala. Mitzvahs have agbala atzmes. This is going to be the vart. But let's read the first half of the Igeres HaKedesh, which speaks about the idea that in Yiddishkeit there has to be tzimtzum midda v'agbala. Even the explanation of the Pima Shekosa, but Zayir HaKadosh doesn't say it is chesed v'is chesed. There's two levels of chesed. It is chesed elam. There's a chesed which is connected to the world, and of course chesed elam means a chesed which is limited. V'yis chesed law, there's a kindness which is higher than the world, urav chesed v'chuli, which is also called the infinite chesed, and in the language, the Geras HaKedesh, it's going to be called chaste havaya, the chesed of Shem Havaya. And the Alter Rebbe goes right into the sugya of Gvuras. Everybody knows that Ateda nikras eis. Teda is called ois. Ois means power. Shulash and Gevura, it's a word that means strength. Ois also means intensity, tremendous taikif, right? And the Rebbe brings in the Geras HaKedesh, it doesn't mean tzimtzum, it means taikif, but it's also a lashon of Gevura, which means tzimtzum. And again, my understanding is that it means the way the atzmos is concentrated. It doesn't Chassidus. It says in Tanya Perek Lamed Vav at the end. Ois means the way the whole atmos of Elokus is concentrated, which I think is the pshat in mitzvahs. Like it says in Chazal, mitzvahs nemru l'meisha misinai. We got 630 mitzvahs from the Eibishter from Meisha ben Sinai and Mipi HaGevura. And we got them from the Eibishter, but the word to denote Eibishter, which is used is Gevura, because the way the Eibishter gave us mitzvahs is by making a yin from tzimtzum. Okay, it says in the Pasuk, Minei, the right hand of the Eibush which gave us the Teda is Eishtos, a religion of Eish, of fire. Lame comes forward to us from the Eibush. That means to say that in order for the Yamin, the Chesed of the Eibush to reach us, you have to have Eish, which is the union of the Gevura and Tzimtzum. Peter just means Shateda, that the Teda, even though the source and root of Teda is the Eibush's Sadim, Hamuchunim b'Shem Yamin, which are indicated by the word Yamin, right hand. In other words, Hamshachah that brings down Mechinas Elokusi is Barach, the level of the Eibish's godliness. The Ha'ara Me'erein say Barach on a reflection of the infinite light of the Eibishter. El Ha'elam Azayenim V'Tachtenim to the higher world and the lower worlds. Ayadei Ha'adam through a person. Hamam Shechalei Alatzmi, who brings down a light on himself, Bekiyam by fulfilling Ramach, mitzvahs I say the 248 mitzvahs I say, Sheinamach Evidim the Malka, which are the 248 limbs of the Eibush. Taka Hashem has infinite chasadim, which is what the word Yamin indicates, and it comes to us through Ramach mitzvahs. Ramach mitzvahs is not infinite, it's very, very finite. Readers, Ramach Kelim Olavush is 248 vessels and garments. Leha'ara or Leha'ara me'erin say Baruch Hu the infinite light of the Eibush is taka revealed in these mitzvahs. Right, and but it comes down into the levushim and kalim of the mitzvahs. And from this infinite light, it brings to a person the chilu rechimu b'chol mitzvah keneda that you should do mitzvahs with achayas, the infinite level of the Eibishter's light. Perhaps as he said in the Geras HaKedesh Ches, which we learned, ani b'tzadik echse ponecha, that through tzedakah you experience ein sof in your davening. Keneda as it is known. Says the Rebbe Rak. Even though mitzvahs are called Chesed Hashem, and they bring down Ein Sof, but it comes dafke through Oiz and Gevura. The only way we're able to benefit and use and experience and internalize the infinite Ein Sof, which is revealed in mitzvahs called Chesed Havaya, is through Gevura. Which is indicated in the word fire, because the idea of fire is she bechinas tzimtzum ervachais, that contracts the light and the life of the Eibishter. Hanim shachas made in save baruch, which is coming to us in infinite light of the Eibishter, kedei, so that not chas v'shom to make them less, but to concentrate them. Shetuchal is labish b'maisa mitzvahs, we should be able to manifest in our physical performance of mitzvahs. Sherubim kikulam, that most of the mitzvahs that we do in bedvarim chumriyim are connected to physical things. For example, kitzitzis, like putting on tzitzis, or tefillin, v'karbanos and karbanos, or tzedakah. And most mitzvahs are connected to physical things. You have to have a oiz and a gevura, not to make the Ein Sof less, but to concentrate the Ein Sof into a physical act. And because that's a meaning from Ramach is also a meaning from tzimtzum. But not tzimtzum, a diminution, or tzimtzum, a concentration. V'af mitzvahs shein beruch niyisad, even mitzvahs that are called chayvus halavav, spiritual mitzvahs. K'ma yirav yava, fear and love. Afa became they also heim b'chinas gvul umida. The commandment is measured and limited. What do you have to love the Eibush to think about Hashem? How long? Not day and night. There's no such thing as a mitzvah without a shir, and a shir means a hagabala. V'lei b'chinas ein sof klal, not infinite. Ki ava rabba Hashem bli ketz umida ugvul umida. To expect every single person to love Hashem infinitely beyond the end and a measure. And a limitation and a measure, no or most human beings cannot tolerate it in their hearts. At the same time to continue existing as a physical person, I feel it even for one moment. And the proof of this is that, like it says in Tanya Perek Lamed Aleph, When the Eibishter gave us the Teile Shahayis Gal, so because he is Baruch Hashem revealed his Ein Sof, Ve'ein Sof Baruch und in from the Eibishter, a little bit more than we could take. Bebachin as Dibur Viz Galas, the Eibishter spoke and revealed his Ein Sof. So Parcha Nishmas and Chulu people expired and died. So the Eibishter's Ein Sof cannot be Bligavol, has to be Betimtzum. But the Eibishter's Ein Sof being Bligavol, being Betimtzum doesn't mean that it's limited, it means that it's concentrated. That a Yid loves Hashem in a limited way. A Yid fears Hashem in a limited way, he's fulfilling the mitzvah. Take your remain and Neshama Begov, and through this finite mitzvah, you have the Takberes Atmid, the Atmid of the Eibishter, in Hagbal Atmid. This is how I understand this shtickle. Maybe I'm understanding it a little bit wrong, but that's how I understand it. Okay, sure.